memory of Mr. Jeremy, the toil he has gone through to foster true democracy in Singapore. Now I would like to call upon the first speaker who has been instrumental in bringing our party to the stage. His unending and unswerving interest has been exemplary in trying to foster truth and justice in the lives of Singaporeans that can only be served by the practice of not only representative democracy but also a participatory one. Can you put your hands together and welcome Mr. Teck Siong?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Singaporeans. I hope you bear with me for 10 minutes. Now, you know, recently in the past 12 months, there is a financial crisis, not just only in America, originated from the subprime problem. And the institution, the banking institution and the investment institution, more or less meet with great problem and they suffer great loss. And due to this, many of the other countries in Europe, Asia, and all around the world, they meet this financial problem due to the subprime they buy from the American banking institution, resulting all of them suffer great loss. And its impact is so great that the economic crisis starts to spread far and wide and affect every one of us. And Singapore is not spared, or with exception, is not hit by this crisis. Now, why do we are interested in this problem? Because you will notice that our budget this year is 20.5 billion deficit, and this is a very special and exceptional event in Singapore. And why this budget is so important to all of us? Because if this budget is not effective, then the recovery of Singapore economy is going to be in the turmoil, and the investment that we have been investing in all these other institutions will suffer even greater. And you will notice that yesterday the announcement from the Citibank itself, the American government are throwing in 25 billion, into the ordinary share of the Citibank. And what happened to Singapore? They are announcing to convert their preferential share into ordinary share there also. At what price? I'm sure you all know by now that the share market is tumbling very severely, and nobody knows when the upturn will be coming. It may be 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. And this is a very special time that nobody have the confidence of going into the share market. Now, the event in 1929, the Great Depression, is a repeat of the event in 2009 and 2008. And history repeats itself, you see. And when this thing happened, it shows us that we, as a human being, why is that we are unable to prevent all this, you see. And we must try to learn from our mistake. And in Singapore, this great budget that we are now facing, we must ask the question, is this budget helping the rich or are they helping the poor? It seems to me that the bailout of the government are given more to the corporate rather than to the individual. The middle class and the poor are not being supported, giving a helping hand, you see. What they are getting is actually from what they are actually paying for whatever they consume. For example, the services, the charges, the cost of doing business, the cost of living, such as the electricity bill, the charges of this service, and food, the food necessity, all that they have to pay. And the GST, the government are not cutting down. It is very important at this juncture, the GST must be reduced at least by 2%. Even some of them are asking the total abolition for the next 12 months that this GST shouldn't be charged. Now, another thing, the government intention of this bailout is to boost up the economy. Now, if this boost out is not taken in a speedy way, then the economy will not recover. And there are few steps and a few economic method that they must try to do. That is to bring back the manufacturing factors, to create jobs for the Singaporean. Because in the past 20 years, they have been not retaining all this because of the cost of manufacturing going up. Many of these investors who are engaged in manufacturing are shifting the factory from Singapore to the neighboring country, and resulting that our cost is not competitive to the other neighboring country. We must not allow this thing to happen, because this government are keeping on specializing on the electronic sector, which is now facing great problem of exporting to other countries, and our export are coming down all the time. So I hope the manufacturing sector will be picking up very soon, and the government must make an attempt to encourage the investor to come back. Now, ladies and gentlemen, not only this, we realize that we are claiming from the third world to the first world country now. But do you know that every day when we are walking to the housing estate, we realize that our old folks are not able to have a reasonable means of living. Some of them are even sleeping at the void deck. They don't have a shelter cover over their head. And it is a great sign, great pity for us to see our own citizens not able to get a reasonable standard of living. And this is what we call the so-called, first world country that we have in Singapore. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, you will support that this government must not be allowed to carry on to do as and when they like to increase the cost of living, until our poor people are all the time depending on the government for the subsidy and the support. See, we need Singaporean citizens to be more independent, to earn a living so that they can live in a respectful manner and with dignity and pride of their way of life. Right now in Singapore, many of us are facing this problem. So let us together in the opposition try to reclaim the right of the Singaporean to have a reasonable means of living. And before I conclude my appeal to fellow Singaporeans, we must try to make sure that in the opposition camp, we must try to persuade the people, especially the voter, that the opposition today are now fighting for them and try to create a better living condition for Singapore. The bailout is certainly not the way to go because it looks very wrong for citizens to keep on depending on the government for all this. Now let me tell you that this wastage, this manner of grooming and nurturing our citizens is wrong. Why does the government do that? Because they hope that citizens keep on depending on them and they cannot do anything to oppose their way of perpetuating themselves as the government. Now, the next one is the foreigners are taking the job away from the citizens, which is wrong. We must not allow foreigners in large number and taking over the citizen of Singapore job. Now is the right time for the government to make sure they support Singaporeans, not the foreign citizens coming here to take away their job. The next one is we must tell this government, as a leader, they must lead by example. Because right now is the opportunity for them to do so, which they are not doing it. They keep on raising the salary for year after year, and they never even make an attempt to show us that they are truly our leaders. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
That was the Teck Siong. Thank you, Teck Siong. Our next speaker is a socio-political activist. I went into his website yesterday, last night in fact. He's a visual artist and an activist who believes strongly in animal rights, human rights and ecological preservation. Let us welcome Mr. Selan Pale.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Selan Pale, and today I am going to speak about the budget and its allocations, or the differences in allocation for public diplomacy versus defense spending. Today I am speaking on behalf of worldwithoutwar.sg, an anti-war advocacy group that we have in Singapore, the only one. And I'm going to start by talking about the importance of spending public diplomacy over military defense. Now, what is public diplomacy? It's not a word that we hear often in Singapore. And public diplomacy, officially online, refers to government-sponsored programs intended to inform or influence public opinion in other countries by utilizing chief instruments such as publications, motion pictures, cultural exchanges, radio and television. An example of a public diplomacy arm in Singapore would be MICA, which is Ministry of Information, Communication and the Arts. And public diplomacy is different from traditional diplomacy, whereas traditional diplomacy is where one government speaks to another government, whereas public diplomacy is more open in the sense that individuals and organizations can offer differing views to people in other countries, especially neighboring countries, about the social, political and economic climates of the country that they are in. Now, while we enter what is likely to be the worst recession Singapore has faced since independence, the Singapore government is going to increase its military budget by 6% from last year to $11.5 billion. This is pale in comparison with the $769 million put aside for MICA, which is the public diplomacy arm of Singapore. At the state our country is in, is this the kind of priority which we should be setting, where we put our military spending at 14 times more than what we spend on public diplomacy? I want to talk about the societal impacts. Aside from all the arguments about we should be defending ourselves in this time of crisis and all this paranoia that the government is trying to spread amongst the people, I want to talk about the societal impacts of spending 14 times more on military spending as compared to public diplomacy. What kind of message are we sending to the people? Now, some of you might know that we are involved in some armed production that is quite controversial today, including cluster bombs and landmines, and the arms trade, where we supply arms to countries such as Burma and others. Now, when I talk about the societal impact, I just want to give you a very personal example, because I don't want to go into figures here. I spoke to a fellow Singaporean recently, and I told him, do you know that the Singapore government is selling arms to the Burmese junta, which may be used to kill innocent civilians and monks who are fighting for democracy in the country? And do you know what he told me? He told me, well, we are a small country, so what we have to do is just business. We have to sell, otherwise we can't compete in the global market. Is this the kind of message that we want to send out to our children? That it is okay for us to spend money and to earn money by selling arms to such devious organizations such as the Burmese junta? I'm not saying that we shouldn't defend ourselves at all. I'm saying that look at the reality of the situation today. What are we defending? Have you spoken to national servicemen and asked them whether they feel patriotic at all, whether they feel they are defending something here in Singapore? This is because of a disconnection between the public and the government and society at large. This disconnection is because the government has made it so difficult, such an uphill task for people's active participation in politics and society. It's because the government has stepped in to say that we always know what is right, you don't know what you're doing, you know, and this has led to the disconnection that I'm talking about. Instead of what I call arrogance and a display of hostility by increasing military spending and talking about building walls against aggressors, especially amongst our neighbors, in this time of crisis, we should be promoting greater understanding and cooperation. In this time of financial crisis, we are worse off than our neighboring countries because we do not have natural resources. We do not even have fields to plant rice, whereas they do. And at this point of time, we should increase greater cooperation and understanding with our immediate neighbors. In conclusion, you see, I had prepared a lot of figures for you, but as an activist, as a member of an anti-war group, I'm not here to argue with you about whether you think spending on military is more important than spending on public diplomacy or anything like that. Even public diplomacy in Singapore might be overtaken by the government and not a true citizen initiative. What I am saying is that we cannot allow even one single bullet to be fired in Burma using Singapore money. As a Singaporean, I don't know about you, but as a Singaporean, I cannot allow one single bullet to be fired in Burma using our money. And if this is the kind of spending that the military budget is going to entail, then I am in total disagreement with it. And me and my group, World Without Border SG, will continue to campaign against it. There is only one Singaporean who dared to stand up against the government. He stood outside the Istana as Dr. Chief Soon Juan, and he told them no to arms, no to deals with the Burmese junta. And this is the main reason why today I'm standing here and arguing that I hope that at least for next year's budget, military spending will go down and will not be 14 times more than what we spend on public diplomacy, which is what we should be concentrating on, especially in this time of dire financial crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Silan. I forgot to mention that Mr. Silan Pillay is the co-founder of World Without War Singapore. Our next speaker is a certified investment fiduciary auditor who writes prolifically on financial issues. Let us welcome Mr. Long Zihan.
Parliamentary session debating the budget, it was disclosed that Temasek lost $58 billion or 31% from March last year to November, the 8-month period. If we had not sold our 3 power companies to foreign companies, would the loss have been greater? Historically, understand that the government has injected $30 billion into Temasek. In the year prior to the period in question, there was a $10 billion injection. Was there any injection during this 8-month period? Changi Airport will be privatized and transferred to Temasek, and the price would be disclosed or determined later. How can there be a meaningful debate in Parliament on the privatization of a strategic state asset like our airport and the price to be determined later? How do you look at the criteria, the process, when you don't know what's the price? Is it very complicated or difficult to give an estimate of the price when you make an announcement that a state asset is to be transferred? Taking the case of the 3 power companies, will Changi Airport someday be sold to foreign companies as well? Will all our state assets someday become all privatized? Will they all someday become foreignly owned? The question was asked in Parliament. If Temasek lost $58 billion in 8 months, how much did GIC lose? Well, the answer was not very clear. The answer was that GIC lost substantially less in percentage terms. If it's substantially less, then more so, what's the reason for not giving us the figure? The Nation newspaper in Thailand said that GIC lost in a worst case scenario an estimated $190 to $200 billion. Fortunately, in a Wall Street Journal article, as they said due to leaked sources, the loss was only $50 billion. So if you combine Temasek and GIC, we are looking at anywhere between 58 plus 50, which is 108 billion, or 58 plus 200, which is 258 billion. I do hope the 50 billion leaked figure is the correct one. But here's the point. The issue here is not how much you lost. The issue here is one of transparency. Our late President Ong Teng Cheong, when he asked how much assets do we have in Singapore, well, he never got an answer. His answer was that it will take 54 man years to have it. Even today, we don't know how much we have, and we don't know how much we have lost. In the debate, new measures were introduced to help Singaporeans' housing woes. So there were changes made. Singaporeans who have owned private property or have used two housing subsidies will be barred permanently from renting a HDB flat. So in the recession, are we saying that just because someone has owned a private property before, or someone bought a flat with his parents and then maybe the parents upgraded the flat once, that for the rest of their lives, they will never get into financial difficulty, that they will never need to rent a HDB flat? Parents with children who own private property, who have a HDB flat with a spare room, will also not be able to rent a HDB flat. What if the parent is retrenched? What if the parent's business fails? He has to stay with his children? Fine. See, the Parents Maintenance Act, you can sue your children to give you money. But unless the act is changed, you can't force your children to take the parents in. Now, in the parliamentary session, changes to the CPF Life scheme was also announced. It's much simpler now. You have 4 schemes to choose from instead of 12. One of the schemes, the life income scheme, is where you choose to receive the most money a month for life. But if you die, there is absolutely no refund at all for your beneficiaries. So if you choose this, one of the 4 options, the one that pays you the most, you decide at 55, 1 month later you die, your life CPF savings is wiped out. You take the life annuity under this option at 65 plus 1 month you die, your life CPF is wiped out. What about widows and children of people who have chosen this scheme? Of course, it's your choice. You can select the scheme. But in which country in the world are citizens allowed to literally take a gamble with their life CPF savings, double or nothing, and lose it all? Uniquely, Singapore. They also announced the HDB lease buyback scheme, where if you are lower income Singaporean, you have only a 2 or 3 room HDB flat, you can sell your lease to HDB. You stay for another 30 years, you get $10,000 upfront, 5,000 cash, 5,000 to your CPF, you get $500 a month from age 65 for life. 30 years later, the HDB takes back your flat. See, it's like a normal reverse mortgage scheme. You take out money, 10,000, you take 500 every month. If the interest is 5%, in the example given by HDB, a flat costing $200,000, in a normal reverse mortgage, you will owe about 400,000 after 30 years. If you assume that the 200,000 3-room HDB flat is going to increase in value at 5% per annum, then after 30 years, the value is 900,000. So does it mean that every family who takes this option stands to lose $500,000 of the equity in 30 years' time? But what choice do they have? Well, perhaps people who are thinking of this scheme should consider renting 1 room of their 3-room flat out for $500, and this amount may increase with inflation, your rental. Lastly, let me talk about the schemes to help unemployed Singaporeans. The PSP, Professional Skills Programs, to help PMETs, professionals, managers, engineers, and technicians, help unemployed PMETs. The help is we encourage you to go for upgrading, upgrade your skills. We pay up to 90% of the course fees. If you're unemployed and you go for upgrading 6 months, a year, or more, how are you going to survive if you have no income? So, the measure doesn't help the people who need it most, those who need jobs and those who need income. Unless you have savings to tide you over during your period of training, how do you go for upgrading and feed your family? For the lower income, you get $4 to $6+ an hour when you go for training. So in a way, you're better than the PMETs. But here's the problem. If you're lower income and you go for retraining, $4 or $6 works out to about $400 to $600 a month. How many Singaporeans can survive when they go for retraining on $400 to $600 a month? The SME scheme to help SME, get credit, government is covering up to 90% of the loss. From what I understand, the problem with a scheme like this is you expect banks to lend more money to SMEs. If they cannot collect the money, the government would cover up to 90%. But in terms of the work done by the bank, is the same. I still have to access the loan. I still do everything I have to do, right? And I will only get my money if I cannot recover the loan. Now, if the loan is $1 million and if there's a loss, I only pay 100,000. I still lose 100,000. So would banks access credit more leniently depending on the amount? Probably not. My suggestion is that the real solution is for the government to lend the money directly to SMEs. And the answer given that this is probably not feasible is because they do not have the expertise. Why can't you employ people from the banks who have the expertise so that the government can lend the money? So in this brief talk, I tried to give you some of my views on the budget. I really do hope that going forward, the activists, NGOs, opposition parties will all work together and work together with the government, right, to get us out of this recession. This is likely to be our worst recession. It's pointless for us to come to bicker, to quarrel. What we really need to do is to work together to get us out of this recession. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. We would like to call upon the next speaker, who was the Chief Executive of NTUC Income till he retired on 20th of February 2007. He needs no further introduction. He has been pushed to the forefront. As you know, recently we had the Lehman Brothers mini bond fiasco. Let us welcome Mr. Tan Kim Lian.
Good afternoon. The resilience package of 20.5 billion was introduced in this year's budget to help Singapore through a period of exceptional difficulty and to save jobs. Now, 20.5 billion is a very large sum of money. If you pay attention to past parliamentary debate, whenever it comes to discussing schemes to help people, and if it's $100 or $200 million, considered to be a lot of money. It's $100 or $200 million is a lot of money. So we are not talking about $200 million. We're not talking about $2 billion 10 times. We're talking about $20 billion. So it's a huge sum of money. Now, if we are spending such a big sum of money, can we be more sure that it will work? Will this 20.5 billion really help to save jobs? Now, one component of this package is the Jobs Credit Scheme. It costs $4.5 billion, and it is given to employers based upon the wages of the employee, 12% up to $2,500 per employee. Now this scheme is called job credit. Now I think we know what is the meaning of credit. Credit means you borrow money from the bank, you need to pay back. Right? When you borrow money on your credit card, you have to pay back. When you buy goods on credit, it means you have to pay later on. So credit means you need to pay back. But this job credit, does the employer have to pay back the money received? The answer is no. I think the nominated MP, Mr. Siu Kam Hong, said this is really a wage subsidy. Now, if it's a wage subsidy, why call it credit? Now, why can't we have a term that is more honest? Describe what it really is. If it's a subsidy, call it a subsidy. Of course, we know the government doesn't want to subsidize transport, doesn't want to subsidize utilities. They are for the people. But then when it comes to subsidizing employers, it seems to be okay. Just call it by another name, credit. So I did a survey in my blog. I invite you to visit my blog because there are quite a number of very interesting surveys. This survey asked the people, what do you think of the job credit scheme? 89 people replied to the survey. Now, in case you think 89 people is small, a survey of this type, 50 people will give quite reliable answers. Because when I did survey, based on 50 people, I get certain answers. Later on, when the number reached 200, the answer about the same. So 89 is quite reliable. And here are the findings. A score of 1 means strongly disagree, 3 is neutral, 5 is strongly agree. So here are the opinion of the people. With the subsidy, employers are less likely to retrench workers. The score is 2.10. 2.10 means disagree. So the people say they don't think that this will prevent retrenchment. The scheme will help to save jobs, score 2.13. Disagree. Alright? If it's 1.0, it's strongly disagree. So this is just disagree. Employers will use a subsidy to create or preserve jobs, 2.03. This is an innovative scheme, 1.97. So all the scores are around 2.0. Most of the respondents, the 89 people, think that they don't like the scheme. They are skeptical that this scheme will help to protect jobs. Are there better ways to help workers? This is in my survey, and I put a few suggestions. And here are the findings. The subsidy should be paid to workers who are retrenched, rather than paid to employers. Paid to workers who are retrenched. 4.06. That means agree. Not strongly agree, but more they agree. The next suggestion, pay the subsidy to the employee directly. The score is 3.87. Pay as a wage supplement to low-income workers. Take the money for people with low income, give a wage supplement. The score is 3.85. All these are agree. And then pay as a supplement to workers on reduced earnings. Because I think during difficult times, many companies will be putting workers on 4-day week, 3-day week. So their pay is going to be reduced. So use this to pay as a supplement. 3.64. Now, all these suggestions have a score of 3.0, indicating agreement. The strongest support is for money to be paid to workers who are retrenched or as a wage supplement to low-income workers. There's a preference for the supplement to be paid directly to the employee rather than through the employer. So please excuse some of my spelling mistakes. Next question is I asked the people, is the job credit the correct name? 93.1% say no. This is not the correct name. I also did another survey asking about the budget in general. Here, 95 people responded to the survey. The findings are, the budget is good for business. Anything above 3 means agree. Below 3 means disagree. So they agree. The budget will help to save jobs. No, 2.63. I feel secure about my job, my business. No, 2.58. The budget will help economic recovery. No, 2.54. The budget is good for the people. No, 2.48. The budget will help the unemployed. No. So this is the opinions of the people who participated in the survey. The conclusion is yes, it's good for business, but it's not good for the people. Of course, many of us on the ground get this opinion, but the opinion we get are just ad hoc opinion. So somebody who saw this survey says, yeah, this reflects what we know, but this put it into certain numbers to back it up. Okay. Now, prior to the budget, I actually wrote a suggestion about what we should do to cope with the economic difficulties. And I suggested that we should introduce a relief loan. That means people who are retrenched or who suffer a drop of earning due to shorter work week should be allowed to take a loan for the amount that they have, the income they have lost, but that loan should be repaid. The main feature is the loan will carry an interest rate of 2.5%, the same rate as CPF, so that these people don't have to borrow on credit cards, paying 24%, borrow from loan sharks, paying higher than that. So why not we introduce a relief loan for people who need it because of retrenchment or reduced earnings. Of course, this is similar to allowing CPF to be withdrawn. So this was my proposal, and this is to be provided by a government agency. I did a survey, also a separate survey, asking the participants, the people of Singapore, those who visited my blog, what do they think about this idea. 85 people responded to the survey. I asked, is this a good idea, is this workable? Those who say it's a good idea, it's worth a try, is 78.6%. Of course, we all know such a scheme can be abused. People borrow, don't pay back, they run away. So I asked, is abuse big or small? And many people say the abuse is small and can be managed. Now this is quite important because I've seen certain schemes that are good for large numbers of people. They are not being accepted just because of a small risk of abuse. Then entirely the scheme is not introduced. But the majority of the people say, look, these things can be managed and therefore it's worth giving it a try. Then I asked the question, should Singapore introduce unemployment insurance as you have in many other countries? 39.8% say yes. 42.2% say better to introduce relief loan. No need to be unemployment insurance, just relief loan. But the total of these two is 80%. Basically 80% says, look, if people are unemployed, retrenched, they need some help. Either give them unemployment insurance or a relief loan. There's also another question about how to cope with the recession, and it is to boost consumer spending. Right now, our economic problem is many people are not spending. I went to Dubai, the plane is half full, Changi Airport is quite deserted. Well, everybody is stopping the spending. Very soon, more workers will be retrenched. The shops, more will be retrenched. So you need to encourage some consumer spending, otherwise the recession will be worse. And then I asked what is the best way. GST should be reduced to boost consumer spending. 79.3% say yes. That's your answer for your suggestion. Now, how much to be reduced? The largest number says 4%. Singaporeans are not unreasonable people. Of course, some will say 7%. A majority says 4%. Some even say 2% is enough. Okay, so I think if our leaders think that Singaporeans can't be trusted to think, I think Singaporeans are quite sensible people. So they say 4%. I asked what form should it take? Majority says cut GST. 56.6% say cut GST. Some says give cash hand out. You know, what the government does, give cash hand out, but that's only 28.9%. And then give food vouchers, 14.5%. Okay, what is my preference? My preference is boost consumer spending by cutting GST by 4%. Introduce relief loan for people who are retrenched or who suffer a drop of earning. The relief loan will be at an interest rate of 2.5% and can be drawn for 24 months. And since they are money to be given away from the resilience package, allow 1/4 of the relief loan to be as a direct subsidy. So only 3/4 of the loan needs to be repaid. Okay, so I thought that this is a good, doesn't cost that much, but it's helpful to the people. And I think the cost of the relief loan will be lower than the amount spent on the job credit scheme. So I want to introduce you to come to my blog. In my blog now, there are a few very interesting surveys, two very interesting surveys about the people's voting pattern in the coming general election. Not only do I do the survey, I also publish the answers. So go and find out what do the general people think. And then I invite you to come to the online citizen, which I contribute once in a while, but it's a good platform. And then finally, there's another blog called the Civic Advocator. People helping me to get 100,000 signatures.
Thank you, Mr. Tan, for the revelation, the living statistics. Talking about blog, the Reform Party has launched our own blog. It is at www.thereformparty.net. Do engage us by visiting the blog. Our next speaker is Mr. Ravi Philemon. Mr. Ravi is a social worker, and he is also a contributor to the online citizen, some of his articles. Let us welcome Mr. Ravi.
Thank you, Teksang, for inviting me to be one of the panelists at the Reform Party. I was getting a little bit worried because initially I was supposed to be the second speaker for the forum, and there are three issues that I was going to speak on, and I thought if I take like between 5 to 6 minutes to speak on each issue, then it should take like between 15 to 20 minutes. And then Prabhakaran said that each speaker will be given 10 to 15 minutes, so And then I was moved from being the second speaker to being the fourth or the fifth speaker. And I was like looking at the time, do I have enough time to say whatever I want to say? And so please bear with me. Well, the first thing that I want to talk about is the unemployment insurance, which I believe is an economic stabilizer. And I believe that the budget 2009 should be more generous in helping individuals. A lot of measures in budget 2009 have gone on to benefit businesses more than individuals. In fact, I was in one of the feedback sessions for budget 2009, where Dr. Amy Cole was one of the moderators, and the co-moderator from the Ministry of Finance, he said that last year we looked at how we can help the ordinary Singaporeans who are affected by the income disparity, but this year we want to help businesses survive. And one of my comments at the feedback session was that, I mean, it's true that we should help viable businesses survive, but we should not neglect the ordinary Singaporeans who are affected by the financial crisis as well. And true enough, budget 2009 focuses more on saving businesses, doesn't matter if it's viable or not, but on saving businesses than on helping the individuals. We should have measures that target workers directly. Initiate measures like unemployment insurance, which will be a means of temporary income for eligible workers who become unemployed through no fault of their own. They're ready and willing to work, but they just have got no work to do. The International Labour Organization, which is a United Nations agency, it says, improving social protection systems and providing immediate relief to workers and families are essential complementary interventions to employment growth strategies. Extensions of unemployment insurance and of healthcare coverage are essential measures to help people face the crisis. Unemployment insurance sometimes not only provide time to seek new opportunities and to reskill, but they also serve to maintain an adequate level of consumption in society. But is unemployment insurance appropriate for a tiger economy like Singapore? Sure it is. South Korea, which is the first country to be identified as a tiger economy, initiated unemployment insurance in the year 1995, and in 1997, in the wake of an unprecedented economic crisis, it was expanded further, and in 1998, the International Labour Organization says that South Korea seems to be the only Asian crisis that seems to be coming out of the economic crisis. So if it could work for South Korea, why cannot it work for Singapore? Now I feel that Budget 2009 should have funded such an unemployment insurance scheme from government surpluses. Because that's the excuse that seems to be given in Budget 2006. When the initiative of unemployment insurance was raised up, that was one of the excuses that was given. It says that who would fund this unemployment insurance? Well, we have budget surpluses, and the budget surpluses could have been used to fund the unemployment insurance in this economic crisis. But once the economy picks up, then the budget surpluses to pay for this unemployment insurance using budget surpluses should discontinue, and it should be paid from the employees should contribute to such a scheme. The tool of CPF. The CPF rates have been revised down during each crisis. In 1986, it was revised down from 25% to 20%, the employer contribution rate. In 1998, during the Asian financial crisis, it was cut from 20% to 10%. In the year 2003, during the SARS crisis, it was cut from 16% to 13%. And in 2007, the employer rates were raised back to just 14.5%. The employers the employer CPF contribution rate should be restored to at least the pre-SARS rate of 16% after this economic crisis ends, and the increase in the rate of contribution should be used for needful social protection schemes, including schemes like unemployment insurance. Kenneth Jarednam, he wrote me a note and he says, and the point about unemployment insurance is, apart from any justification on equity grounds, is that it acts as an automatic stabilizer to maintain consumption and prevent the economy deteriorating further. Boosting domestic consumption is something we'll have to do in the future, as they have reached the end of the road as far as depending on the US for export-led growth. Unemployment insurance is the answer for flexible, less secure work environment that Singapore faces. Even Thailand has introduced unemployment insurance in the year 2004, and countries like Malaysia and even Nepal are